The baby's screams cut through the airplane cabin like a siren, each cry making Zara's heart sink deeper into her chest. She bounced little Emma on her lap, whispering soft words that seemed to fall on deaf ears. The other passengers were staring now, their faces twisted with annoyance and judgment. A man in seat 12B rolled his eyes so hard she thought they might fall out. A woman across the aisle actually put on noise-canceling headphones and shot her a look that could freeze fire. "Please, baby girl, please," Zara whispered, her voice cracking with exhaustion. She hadn't slept more than 2 hours in the past 3 days. The job interview in Atlanta had been a disaster, and now she was flying back to Chicago with nothing but $27 in her bank account and a screaming 8-month-old who seemed to sense her mother's desperation. Emma's face was red and wet with tears, her tiny fists waving in the air as if she was fighting invisible demons. Zara tried everything she could think of. She offered the bottle, but Emma pushed it away. She tried the pacifier, but it flew across the aisle and landed near the feet of a businessman who looked at it like it was contaminated. "Ma'am, you need to quiet that baby down," the flight attendant said, leaning over with a fake smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Other passengers are complaining." Zara felt her cheeks burn with shame. "I'm trying. She's usually not like this. I think her ears are bothering her from the altitude." The flight attendant's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. "Well, try harder. We still have 2 hours left in this flight." As the woman walked away, Zara felt tears building in her own eyes. She was 24 years old, alone, broke, and failing at the one thing that mattered most, being a good mother to Emma. The father had disappeared the moment she told him she was pregnant, leaving her to figure everything out on her own. She looked around the cabin, hoping for a friendly face, someone who might offer a kind word or even just a smile. Instead, she found more irritated expressions and people pointedly looking away. A teenage girl in the row behind her was actually filming with her phone, probably planning to post about the terrible mother on social media. Emma's cries grew louder, more desperate. Zara tried walking up and down the narrow aisle, but there was barely any room to move. The baby seemed to get more upset with each step. Other passengers pulled their legs back as she passed, as if she and Emma were carrying some kind of disease. "This is ridiculous," someone muttered loudly enough for her to hear. "Some people shouldn't travel with babies," another voice added. Zara's vision blurred with tears she was trying hard not to shed. She had never felt so alone, so judged, so completely helpless. The walls of the airplane seemed to close in around her, and she could feel her chest tightening with panic. Emma's screaming was getting worse, and Zara was running out of ideas. She slumped back into her seat in coach, section 23E, the middle seat between a large man who kept elbowing her and a woman who had claimed both armrests from the moment they boarded. Emma's cries echoed through the cabin, and Zara could practically feel the anger radiating from every direction. That's when she noticed him. A man in an expensive-looking suit was standing in the aisle near first class, looking back toward her section. Unlike everyone else, his face didn't show irritation or judgment. Instead, he looked concerned, almost worried. He was tall with kind eyes and appeared to be in his early 30s. For a moment, their eyes met across the crowded cabin. He seemed to be studying the situation, taking in her obvious distress and Emma's continued crying. Then, to her surprise, he started walking toward her section. Most people would have put on headphones or asked to change seats. But this stranger was walking toward the chaos, toward her and her screaming baby, with what looked like genuine concern on his face. Zara quickly looked away, embarrassed by her red eyes and disheveled appearance. She probably looked as desperate as she felt, holding a baby who wouldn't stop crying while wearing wrinkled clothes and day-old makeup. Emma's screams reached a new level, causing several passengers to actually cover their ears. Zara felt like disappearing into her seat. This was supposed to be a fresh start, a new beginning after the failed job interview. Instead, it was turning into the most humiliating experience of her life. The expensive-suited stranger was getting closer, moving carefully through the narrow aisle. Zara couldn't imagine what he wanted, but she braced herself for another complaint, another person telling her she was a terrible mother who shouldn't be allowed on airplanes. She had no idea that this moment, this awful, embarrassing, seemingly hopeless moment, was about to change her entire life. "Excuse me," the man said softly, stopping beside Zara's row. His voice was gentle, nothing like the harsh tones she'd been hearing from other passengers. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I couldn't help but notice you're having a difficult time. Would you mind if I tried something?" Zara looked up at him, confusion written across her face. He was even more handsome up close, with warm brown eyes and a kind smile. His suit probably cost more than she made in 3 months, and everything about him screamed wealth and success. What could someone like him possibly want with someone like her? What? She stammered, trying to process his words over Emma's continued screaming. I have some experience with babies, he explained, his voice calm and reassuring. My sister has 3 kids and I've learned a few tricks over the years. Sometimes a change of arms helps. Would you be comfortable letting me hold her for a moment? Zara stared at him in disbelief. In a cabin full of people who were treating her like she had the plague, this stranger was offering to help. She was so shocked she almost couldn't speak. You want to hold my baby? She asked, certain she had misunderstood. Only if you're comfortable with it, he said quickly. I know it might seem strange, but I can see how exhausted you are. Sometimes babies just need a different energy, you know? The man in the seat beside Zara huffed loudly. Anything to make that noise stop, he grumbled. The stranger shot him a sharp look that made the man sink back into his seat. Actually, he said, turning back to Zara with a smile, why don't you both come sit with me? I have an empty seat next to me in first class. You'll have more room and it might be easier to calm her down. Zara's mouth fell open. First class? But I can't afford to upgrade and I don't think they allow. Don't worry about that, he said. I'm Adrian, by the way. Adrian Chin. And you are? Zara, she replied hesitantly. Zara Williams. And this is Emma. Beautiful name for a beautiful baby, Adrian said, and even through her tears, Emma seemed to pause for a moment at the sound of his voice. What do you say, Zara? Will you let me help? Every instinct told Zara to be suspicious. Strange men on airplanes didn't just offer to help single mothers out of the kindness of their hearts. But looking into Adrian's eyes, she saw something genuine there, something that made her want to trust him. Plus, she was so desperate and exhausted that she was willing to try anything. Okay, she whispered, gathering Emma's diaper bag and bottle. Thank you. Adrian smiled and gently took Emma's carrier seat while Zara gathered their things. As they walked toward first class, she noticed how other passengers looked at them differently now. Instead of judgment, she saw curiosity and even a few approving nods. First class was like entering another world. The seats were enormous, more like individual rooms than airplane seats. Adrian led her to his row, where the seat next to him was indeed empty. Here, let me, Adrian said, reaching for Emma. Zara hesitated for just a moment before carefully transferring her daughter to his arms. The effect was almost immediate. Emma's screams turned to whimpers, then to soft hiccups. Adrian held her with surprising confidence, supporting her head perfectly and swaying slightly in a natural rhythm. How did you? Zara started, then stopped, watching in amazement as Emma actually looked around curiously instead of crying. Sometimes babies pick up on their parents' stress, Adrian explained quietly. You've been so worried about her crying that she could feel your anxiety. When someone else holds them, it breaks that cycle. Zara sank into the luxurious seat, feeling like she could breathe for the first time in hours. The first-class cabin was quiet and peaceful, a complete contrast to the chaos she just left behind. I don't understand why you're helping me, she said honestly. People were looking at me like I was the worst person in the world back there. Adrian's expression grew serious. Those people clearly don't remember what it's like to be a parent, or maybe they've forgotten what it feels like to need help. Everyone deserves kindness, especially when they're doing their best in a difficult situation. Emma had stopped crying completely now and was actually reaching for Adrian's tie with curious fingers. He laughed softly and adjusted his position so she could explore safely. She likes you, Zara observed, unable to hide her amazement. I like her too, Adrian replied. She's got beautiful eyes just like her mom. Zara felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. She couldn't remember the last time someone had said something nice about her appearance. Between working double shifts and taking care of Emma alone, she barely had time to shower, let alone worry about how she looked. Are you traveling for business? Adrian asked, clearly trying to make conversation while Emma played with his expensive watch. Job interview, Zara replied. Well, failed job interview. I'm heading back to Chicago with nothing to show for it except a maxed-out credit card and a bruised ego. I'm sorry to hear that. What kind of work do you do? Marketing and communications. Or at least I used to. It's been hard to find steady work since Emma was born. Employers say they understand about single mothers, but when it comes time to hire someone who might need time off for a sick baby. Adrian nodded understanding. That's incredibly unfair but unfortunately common. You shouldn't have to choose between being a good mother and having a career. Tell that to the world, Zara said with a bitter laugh. They talked quietly for the next hour, Emma content in Adrian's arms. Zara found herself relaxing for the first time in months. Adrian was easy to talk to, and he seemed genuinely interested in her life and her struggles. He didn't judge her for being a single mother, and he didn't act like her situation was her fault. As the conversation continued, Zara felt her eyelids growing heavy. The combination of exhaustion, stress relief, and the gentle motion of the airplane was making it hard to stay awake. "Why don't you rest for a bit?" Adrian suggested kindly. "I've got Emma, and you look like you haven't slept in days." "I couldn't," Zara protested weakly. "You don't even know us." "Sometimes that makes it easier," Adrian said with a gentle smile. "Close your eyes, Zara. You're safe here." Despite every reasonable thought in her head telling her not to trust a stranger, Zara felt herself believing him. There was something about Adrian that made her feel protected, cared for in a way she hadn't experienced in a very long time. Her eyes drifted closed, and for the first time in months, Zara allowed herself to truly rest. The last thing Zara remembered was the gentle sound of Adrian's voice humming a soft tune to Emma. Her daughter was making those sweet baby sounds she made when she was content, little coos and sighs that meant all was right in her small world. For the first time since boarding the plane, Zara felt her shoulders relax and her breathing slow down. The first-class seat was more comfortable than her own bed at home. The soft leather seemed to embrace her tired body, and the quiet atmosphere was so different from the hostile environment she'd left behind in coach. She could hear Adrian speaking softly to Emma, his voice a gentle rumble that seemed to create a bubble of peace around them. "That's right, little one," she heard him whisper. "Your mama's been working so hard to take care of you. She deserves some rest." Even in her drowsy state, those words touched something deep in Zara's heart. When was the last time someone had acknowledged how hard she was trying? When had anyone last shown concern for her well-being instead of just complaining about Emma's crying? She tried to fight the exhaustion, tried to stay alert and proper. After all, this was a stranger no matter how kind he seemed. But her body had other plans. Days of sleepless nights, stress, and worry had caught up with her all at once. The relief of having someone else hold Emma, someone who actually seemed to enjoy it, was overwhelming. As sleep began to take hold, Zara was dimly aware of Adrian adjusting his position to make her more comfortable. She felt something soft cover her shoulders, his suit jacket, she realized. The gesture was so thoughtful, so protective, that it made her eyes water even as she drifted off. Adrian continued to hold Emma, who had settled into that peaceful state babies achieve when they feel completely safe. He looked down at the tiny girl in his arms, then over at her sleeping mother, and felt something shift inside his chest. There was something about this small family that touched him in a way he hadn't expected. He'd built his entire adult life around work, around success and achievement. At 32 he had everything most people dreamed of: money, power, respect. But holding Emma while her mother slept peacefully beside him, Adrian realized how empty his life had become. When was the last time he'd felt needed for something that really mattered? Emma grabbed his finger with her tiny hand, holding on with surprising strength. Her eyes were wide and curious now, taking in the new face above her. Adrian found himself making silly expressions, delighted when Emma responded with what might have been her first smile. "You're a smart girl, aren't you?" he whispered. "You know your mama loves you very much. She's been so worried about you, trying so hard to make everything perfect." The flight attendant approached quietly, clearly surprised to see the airplane's most distinguished passenger holding a baby while a young woman slept against his shoulder. "Mr. Chin, is everything all right?" she asked softly. "Everything's perfect, Jennifer," Adrian replied. "Could you bring a blanket for the baby? And maybe some warm milk if you have any?" "Of course, sir. Right away." Adrian had been flying this route monthly for years. The crew knew him well, knew he was usually all business, working on his laptop or making phone calls throughout the flight. They'd never seen him interact with other passengers, let alone hold someone's baby while they slept. Jennifer returned with a soft airline blanket and a bottle of warmed milk. "She's beautiful," she commented quietly, looking at Emma. "She is," Adrian agreed. "Both of them are." As the flight continued, Adrian found himself studying Zara's sleeping face. Even exhausted and stressed, she was lovely. But more than that, there was something about her that drew him in, a strength mixed with vulnerability that spoke to something deep inside him. He thought about their conversation, about her struggles as a single mother trying to build a career. It wasn't fair that someone working so hard should have such a difficult time finding opportunity. He thought about the failed job interview she'd mentioned, about her maxed-out credit card and bruised ego. Emma had finished half the bottle and was starting to get drowsy again. Adrian adjusted her position carefully, not wanting to wake Zara but ensuring the baby was comfortable. Emma's eyes grew heavy, and soon she too was sleeping peacefully. For the first time in years, Adrian wasn't thinking about work or his next business deal. Instead, he was thinking about the woman sleeping beside him and the baby in his arms. He was thinking about how it felt to be needed for something that mattered, to provide comfort and safety to someone who truly deserved it. Other first-class passengers occasionally glanced over, curious about the unusual scene. Adrian Chin was known in certain circles, tech billionaire, CEO of one of the fastest-growing companies in the country. Seeing him holding a baby while a young woman slept against his shoulder was definitely not what anyone expected. But Adrian didn't care about appearances or what people might think. For the first time in a long time, he was exactly where he wanted to be. The plane hit a small patch of turbulence, causing Zara to stir slightly. Without thinking, Adrian's free arm came around her shoulders, steadying her and keeping her comfortable. She settled back into sleep, completely trusting, completely at peace. Looking down at the sleeping mother and baby, Adrian made a decision that would change all their lives. This chance encounter wasn't going to end when the plane landed. Somehow, some way he was going to make sure Zara and Emma were taken care of. He wasn't sure exactly how yet, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to let them disappear from his life without doing everything he could to help. They had given him something precious without even knowing it. They had reminded him what it felt like to be truly human, truly connected to something that mattered. As Chicago grew larger outside the airplane window, Adrian held Emma close and let Zara sleep peacefully against his shoulder. He was already planning, already thinking of ways to turn this chance meeting into something that could change their lives forever. The wheels touched down smoothly, but Adrian made no move to wake them. Let the other passengers rush off the plane. This moment was too precious to end just yet. Zara woke slowly, consciousness returning in gentle waves. For a moment she couldn't remember where she was. The surface beneath her cheek was soft and warm, and she could smell expensive cologne mixed with something comforting and masculine. Then reality hit her like cold water. She was leaning against a stranger's shoulder. On an airplane. With her baby. Zara jerked upright, her heart racing with embarrassment and panic. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." "It's okay," Adrian said softly, his voice warm with understanding. "You needed the rest. How do you feel?" Zara looked around, trying to get her bearings. The airplane was quiet, and she could see through the windows that they were on the ground. Most of the other passengers had already left. "We landed?" she asked, still feeling disoriented. "About 10 minutes ago," Adrian confirmed. "I didn't want to wake you. You seemed so peaceful." That's when Zara noticed Emma was still in Adrian's arms, awake and content, playing with the buttons on his shirt. Her daughter looked happier than she had in days. "You held her the whole time I was sleeping?" Zara asked, amazed. "She's been perfect," Adrian said, standing carefully with Emma still in his arms. "I think she just needed someone who wasn't stressed out. Babies are very sensitive to emotions." Zara felt tears prick her eyes. This stranger had shown her more kindness in a few hours than she'd experienced in months. She stood up, gathering Emma's things, but realized she didn't know how to thank him properly. "I don't know what to say," she began. "You saved my life today. Literally. I was having a complete breakdown and you—" "You don't need to thank me," Adrian interrupted gently. "Anyone would have done the same thing." "No, they wouldn't have," Zara said firmly. "Everyone else on that plane looked at me like I was the worst person in the world. You were the only one who saw a mother who needed help instead of a problem to be avoided." Adrian smiled and carefully transferred Emma back to Zara's arms. As he did, something fell from his jacket pocket, a business card. "Oh, that's mine," he said, bending to pick it up. But instead of putting it back in his pocket, he held it out to her. "I want you to have this." Zara took the card and glanced at it. Her eyes widened as she read the name, Adrian Chin, CEO, Chin Technologies. The address was in downtown Chicago, and there was a personal phone number written on the back in neat handwriting. "You're a CEO?" she asked, shocked. "Among other things," Adrian said with a modest smile. "The number on the back is my personal cell phone. I want you to call me." Why?" Zara stammered, completely confused. "Because I meant what I said earlier. It's not fair that someone with your talents should struggle to find work just because she's a single mother. I might be able to help with that." Zara stared at the card, then back at Adrian. "I don't understand. You don't even know me. You don't know anything about my qualifications or my experience. I know you're intelligent from our conversation. I know you're dedicated because of how much you love your daughter. I know you're strong because you're doing one of the hardest jobs in the world completely on your own. Those are the qualities I look for in employees. Before Zara could respond, a flight attendant approached them. "Mr. Chin? Your car is waiting whenever you're ready." "Thank you, Jennifer," Adrian replied. Then he turned back to Zara. "Promise me you'll call." "I promise," Zara said, though she still couldn't quite believe this was happening. Adrian smiled and gently touched Emma's cheek. "Take care of your mama, little one. She's pretty special." As Adrian walked away, Zara stood frozen in the first-class cabin, holding Emma and staring at the business card. Other passengers were filing past them, and she realized they needed to get off the plane. She gathered their things and made her way toward the exit, her mind spinning. In baggage claim, she found herself looking around for Adrian, but he was nowhere to be seen. Had the whole thing been a dream? But the business card in her hand proved it was real. She looked at it again, and this time she really studied it. Chin Technologies. She'd heard of that company. They were huge, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. "Excuse me, miss?" A voice behind her made her turn around. It was one of the flight attendants from first class. "Yes. I just wanted to say what Mr. Chin did for you today was really special. I've been working these flights for 8 years, and I've never seen him talk to another passenger, let alone help someone the way he helped you." Zara felt her cheeks warm. "He was very kind." "He's a good man," the flight attendant continued. "Whatever he offered you, I hope you'll consider it seriously. He doesn't make offers lightly." As the woman walked away, Zara looked down at Emma, who was studying her mother's face with curious eyes. "What do you think, baby girl?" she whispered. "Did we just meet an angel?" The baggage carousel started moving, and Zara positioned herself to wait for their suitcase. Around her, other passengers from the flight were gathering their belongings and heading home to their normal lives. But Zara's life felt anything but normal anymore. She pulled out her phone and looked up Chin Technologies. The website showed Adrian's photo, the same kind eyes and gentle smile she'd just been looking at. His bio was impressive. MIT graduate, successful entrepreneur, philanthropist. The company had been named one of the best places to work in Chicago 3 years running. "This is crazy," she murmured to herself. A businessman waiting next to her overheard and glanced at her phone screen. "Chin Technologies? Great company. I've been trying to get a meeting with Adrian Chin for months. That guy's a genius." Zara looked at the business card again, at the personal phone number written on the back. Adrian Chin, a billionaire CEO, had given her his personal number and asked her to call. It seemed impossible, like something that happened in movies but not in real life. Their suitcase finally appeared, and Zara grabbed it with one hand while balancing Emma with the other. As she walked toward the airport exit, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just taken a dramatic turn. She had no idea that back in his car, Adrian was already making plans to help her, already thinking about the perfect position in his company for someone with her skills and determination. She had no idea that this flight, which had started as the worst experience of her life, was about to become the beginning of something beautiful. All she knew was that for the first time in months she felt hopeful. And that was enough for now. Back in her small apartment in Chicago, Zara couldn't stop staring at Adrian's business card. Emma was finally sleeping peacefully in her crib after being fed and changed, and the apartment was quiet except for the sound of Zara's laptop humming to life. She told herself she was just curious. After all, it wasn't every day you met a billionaire on an airplane, let alone one who offered to help you find a job. She needed to know who Adrian Chin really was before she even considered calling the number on his card. The search results were overwhelming. Adrian Chin wasn't just successful, he was legendary in the business world. Article after article described his rise from a middle-class family to becoming one of the youngest billionaires in tech. His company, Chin Technologies, specialized in artificial intelligence and data analytics, with clients ranging from major corporations to government agencies. But what struck Zara most were the articles about his personal life, or rather, the lack of it. Every business profile mentioned that he was unmarried, intensely private, and completely focused on his work. There were no photos of him at social events, no mentions of girlfriends or relationships. He seemed to live his life entirely in the business world. One article from Forbes caught her attention. The loneliest billionaire. Adrian Chin's success comes at a personal cost. The piece talked about how Adrian worked 16-hour days and hadn't taken a vacation in over 3 years. It painted a picture of a man who had everything money could buy but lacked the personal connections that made life meaningful. Zara found herself feeling sorry for him, which seemed ridiculous. How could you feel sorry for someone who had unlimited resources and could buy anything he wanted? She clicked on another link, this one about Chin Technologies' workplace culture. The company had been featured in several best places to work articles, with employees praising the supportive environment, excellent benefits, and genuine care for work-life balance. Several testimonials specifically mentioned how the company supported working parents. Mr. Chin personally approved my request for flexible hours when my son was diagnosed with autism, one employee wrote. He told me that family always comes first, and he meant it. I've never worked for a company that actually lived up to its values the way this one does. Another testimonial read, I was a single mother when I started here, struggling to make ends meet. The company didn't just give me a job, they gave me hope. Mr. Chin made sure I had access to the on-site childcare and additional training programs. 5 years later, I'm a department manager with a secure future for my family. Zara felt her heart skip a beat. These weren't just feel-good corporate stories, they were real experiences from real people whose lives had been changed by Adrian's leadership. She found more articles about Adrian's philanthropic work. He donated millions to education programs, particularly those focused on helping single mothers get job training and support. He'd funded scholarships for children from low-income families and had quietly paid for thousands of families' medical bills when they couldn't afford treatment. One local news story made her stop and read twice. A woman named Patricia Gonzalez had been featured after Adrian personally intervened when she was about to lose her home. She was a single mother of 3 who had been laid off and couldn't find work. Adrian not only paid her mortgage but also gave her a job at his company and arranged for childcare. He saved our lives, Patricia said in the interview. But the amazing thing is, he didn't do it for publicity or recognition. He did it because he genuinely cares about people. That's the kind of man Adrian Chin is. The article mentioned that Patricia's story wasn't unique. Adrian regularly helped families in crisis, but usually insisted on keeping his involvement private. Zara leaned back in her chair, her mind spinning. The man who had helped her on the airplane wasn't just being kind in the moment, kindness seemed to be woven into the very fabric of who he was. She looked at more photos of Adrian from business events and interviews. In every single one he looked professional and successful, but there was something in his eyes that seemed lonely, almost sad. Even surrounded by people at corporate functions, he looked like he was standing apart from everyone else. Then she found a video interview from a business conference. Adrian was being asked about his success and what drove him to work so hard. Success isn't just about building wealth, he said, his voice serious and thoughtful. It's about using whatever resources you have to make a real difference in people's lives. I've been incredibly fortunate, and with that fortune comes responsibility. If I can help even one family have a better life, then everything I've built has been worth it. The interviewer asked about his personal life, and Adrian's expression became guarded. I believe there's a time for everything. Right now, my focus is on the work that needs to be done. Personal fulfillment can wait. Watching him say those words, Zara felt a deep sadness. Here was a man who spent his life helping others find happiness and stability, but seemed to have sacrificed his own personal happiness in the process. She closed the laptop and walked over to Emma's crib. Her daughter was sleeping peacefully, completely unaware of the whirlwind of thoughts going through her mother's mind. What do you think, baby girl? Zara whispered. Should mommy call the nice man who helped us today? Emma stirred slightly but didn't wake. In the soft light of the nursery, Zara made her decision. Adrian Chin wasn't just offering her a job opportunity, he was offering hope. After months of rejection and struggling, someone finally believed in her potential. Someone who had the power to actually make a difference was willing to give her a chance. But more than that, Zara found herself thinking about the loneliness she'd seen in Adrian's eyes, both on the plane and in all those business photos. Maybe, just maybe, this meeting had been meant to help both of them. She looked at the business card one more time, then placed it carefully on her bedside table. Tomorrow she would gather her courage and make the call that might change everything. Tonight, for the first time in months, she would sleep peacefully, knowing that tomorrow held possibilities she'd never dared to imagine. Zara spent the entire next morning pacing around her apartment, holding Adrian's business card and trying to build up the courage to call. She must have picked up her phone 20 times, only to put it back down again. What would she say? Thank you for helping me with my baby, and by the way, I'd love that job you mentioned? It seemed too forward, too presumptuous. Maybe he'd offered just to be polite and didn't actually expect her to call. Emma was having one of her fussy mornings, crying every time Zara put her down. Zara was walking laps around the living room, bouncing Emma and trying to calm her when her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and froze. It was the number from Adrian's business card. Hello, she answered, her voice slightly breathless from surprise. Zara? This is Adrian Chin. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. In the background, Emma let out a particularly loud cry, and Zara felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly. "Emma's having a difficult morning. Let me just—" "Don't apologize." Adrian's voice was warm and understanding. "How is she doing? And more importantly, how are you doing?" Zara was struck by his genuine concern. We're okay. Still processing everything that happened yesterday, honestly. I can imagine. That's actually why I'm calling. I wanted to make sure you made it home safely, and to follow up on our conversation about potential opportunities." Zara's heart started beating faster. "You were serious about that?" "Completely serious. I've been thinking about it since we landed, actually. I have a position opening up in my marketing and communications department. The timing is perfect, and from what you told me about your background, I think you'd be an excellent fit." Zara sank onto her couch, Emma still fussing in her arms. "Adrian, I have to ask, is this because you feel sorry for me? Because if it is, I appreciate the kindness, but I don't want charity." There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Adrian spoke again, his voice was firm but gentle. "Zara, let me be very clear about something. I don't run a billion-dollar company by making emotional hiring decisions. If I'm offering you an opportunity, it's because I believe you can do the job and do it well. What happened on the plane showed me your character, but your qualifications speak for themselves." "But you don't even know my qualifications," Zara protested. "I know you have a degree in marketing from Northwestern University. I know you worked for 2 years at Bradley Communications before Emma was born, and you received excellent performance reviews. I know you've been freelancing since then, trying to balance work with being a single mother, which shows incredible determination and resourcefulness." Zara's mouth fell open. "How do you know all that?" "I had my HR department do some research," Adrian admitted. "I hope you don't mind. I wanted to make sure I could offer you a real opportunity, not just empty promises." "You researched me?" Zara wasn't sure whether to be impressed or concerned. "Standard background check, nothing invasive. What I found confirmed what I already suspected. You're exactly the kind of person our company needs. Someone with talent, dedication, and the perspective that comes from overcoming real challenges." Emma's crying had gradually quieted during the conversation, as if she could sense her mother's excitement and hope. "What kind of position?" Zara asked, hardly daring to believe this was really happening. "Marketing Communications Manager. You'd be working on campaigns for our new client outreach programs, particularly our initiatives focused on family-friendly workplace policies. The salary is competitive, and we offer comprehensive benefits including on-site childcare." "On-site childcare?" Zara repeated weakly. "One of the best facilities in the city," Adrian confirmed. "Emma would be well taken care of while you work, and you could visit her during breaks. We have several working parents who use the service and they rave about it." Zara felt tears building in her eyes. It was everything she'd been hoping for, everything she'd been told was impossible to find, a good job with a company that actually supported working mothers. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you'll come in for an interview," Adrian replied. "Tomorrow afternoon if that works for you. Bring Emma if you need to. Our HR director, Sarah Martinez, is a mother herself and loves babies." "Tomorrow?" Zara's mind was racing. "But I don't have anyone to watch Emma, and I don't have appropriate interview clothes and—" "Zara," Adrian interrupted gently. "Stop worrying about the details. We'll figure everything out. The most important thing is that you come in and let us show you what we're offering. Can you do that?" Taking a deep breath, Zara looked down at Emma, who was now looking up at her with curious eyes. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I can do that." "Excellent. Sarah will email you the details within the hour." "And Zara?" "Yes. I'm really glad you're considering this. I have a feeling it's going to work out well for all of us." After they hung up, Zara sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Emma had fallen asleep in her arms, finally peaceful after her fussy morning. "Did you hear that, baby girl?" Zara whispered. "Mr. Adrian might just be our guardian angel." She looked around her small apartment, at the stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen counter, at the empty refrigerator, at Emma's toys scattered across the second-hand furniture. Tomorrow everything might change. For the first time since Emma was born, Zara allowed herself to imagine a different future. A future where she had a career she was proud of, where Emma had everything she needed, where they didn't have to worry about money or stability. A future where the kindness of a stranger on an airplane had opened doors she never thought would be available to her. Her phone buzzed with an email from Sarah Martinez, containing all the details for tomorrow's interview. As Zara read through the information, she realized that Adrian had thought of everything. The interview was scheduled during lunch hours so she could bring Emma, and there was even a note about the building's family-friendly amenities. This wasn't just a job opportunity. This was someone going out of their way to make sure she succeeded. Zara looked at Emma's peaceful sleeping face and made a silent promise. Tomorrow she was going to walk into that interview with confidence and show Adrian Chen that his faith in her wasn't misplaced. She was going to prove that sometimes, the best business decisions come from following your heart. The Chen Technologies building was more impressive than Zara had imagined. Glass and steel stretched 30 floors into the Chicago sky, with the company logo prominently displayed in elegant silver letters. As she stood on the sidewalk holding Emma's carrier, Zara took a deep breath and tried to calm her nerves. She'd managed to find a professional outfit at a discount store that morning, a simple black dress and blazer that fit well enough. Emma was dressed in her prettiest outfit, a pale yellow dress with tiny flowers that made her look like a little angel. The lobby was stunning with marble floors and modern art installations. But what struck Zara most was the warmth of the atmosphere. Employees moved through the space with genuine smiles, and she could hear laughter coming from various directions. "You must be Zara Williams," a voice said behind her. She turned to see a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a welcoming smile. "I'm Sarah Martinez, Director of Human Resources. And this must be Emma." "Thank you so much for accommodating us," Zara said, shifting Emma's carrier to shake Sarah's hand. "Are you kidding? She's adorable. Let me show you to our childcare facility first. I think you'll be impressed." Sarah led them to an elevator and pressed the button for the 3rd floor. "Adrian told me about meeting you two on the plane. What an incredible story. He hasn't stopped talking about how impressed he was with your strength and character." "He's been so kind," Zara replied, still hardly believing any of this was real. The childcare center took Zara's breath away. It was bright and colorful, with age-appropriate toys and activities scattered throughout several rooms. Qualified caregivers were playing with children of various ages, and everything looked safe, clean, and fun. "We have 15 children enrolled currently," Sarah explained. "Ages 6 weeks to 5 years. The staff are all certified in early childhood education, and we have a pediatric nurse on site during business hours." A caregiver named Michelle approached them with a warm smile. "You must be Emma. I've been looking forward to meeting you." To Zara's amazement, Emma immediately reached for Michelle, showing none of her usual stranger anxiety. "She likes you," Zara observed. "Babies have good instincts about people," Michelle replied, expertly settling Emma in her arms. "Would you like to leave her with us during your interview? We'll take excellent care of her." Normally, Zara would have been anxious about leaving Emma with strangers. But something about this place, these people, felt completely trustworthy. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Absolutely. Take all the time you need." Sarah led Zara back to the elevator and up to the executive floor. As they walked through the halls, Zara noticed how the workspace was designed with families in mind. There were comfortable seating areas for nursing mothers, and she could see several employees who appeared to be on flexible schedules. "Here we are," Sarah said, stopping in front of a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "Adrian will be with us in just a moment." As if summoned by her words, Adrian appeared in the doorway. He looked just as handsome as he had on the plane, but now he was in his element, confident, professional, clearly in command of his domain. "Zara, I'm so glad you came," he said, his smile genuine and warm. "How's Emma settling in downstairs?" "She seems to love it already," Zara replied. "Your facility is incredible. We're proud of it. Please have a seat." The interview began formally, with Sarah asking standard questions about Zara's experience and career goals. But as the conversation progressed, it became clear that this wasn't just about evaluating her qualifications. They were genuinely interested in understanding her perspective and how she could contribute to the company. "One of our biggest challenges," Adrian explained, "is reaching working parents with our family support initiatives. We have excellent programs, but we struggle to communicate their value effectively. We need someone who understands the real challenges working parents face, not just the theoretical ones." "I think I can help with that," Zara said, her confidence growing. "When you're a single parent, every decision about work is complicated by childcare considerations. Your marketing needs to address those practical concerns directly, not just talk about work-life balance in abstract terms." Sarah and Adrian exchanged a look that Zara couldn't quite interpret. "Can you give us a specific example?" Sarah asked. "Sure. Your website mentions flexible scheduling, but it doesn't explain how that actually works day to day. Does flexible mean you can leave early for a doctor's appointment? Can you work from home when your child is sick? These are the questions parents are really asking, but most companies' communications don't address them specifically. Adrian leaned forward, clearly engaged. What else? Your childcare benefit is amazing, but the way it's presented on your career page makes it sound like an afterthought. That should be front and center, with photos of the actual facility and testimonials from parents who use it. You want people to know that this isn't just a company that tolerates working parents, it's a company that was designed with families in mind. Exactly, Adrian said, and there was excitement in his voice. That's exactly the kind of perspective we need. The interview continued for another hour, covering everything from campaign strategies to budget management. Zara found herself relaxing and speaking passionately about ideas she'd been developing during her months of job searching. I have one last question, Sarah said. This position involves working closely with Adrian on high-priority projects. How do you feel about that, given how you two met? Zara looked at Adrian, who seemed genuinely curious about her answer. I hope Adrian knows that I'm grateful for his kindness, but I'm here because I want to earn this job, not because I expect special treatment. If anything, I'll probably work twice as hard to prove that his faith in me wasn't misplaced. Adrian smiled. I was hoping you'd say something like that. After the formal interview ended, Adrian asked if he could walk Zara back to the childcare center. As they rode the elevator down, he seemed more relaxed, less like a CEO and more like the kind man she'd met on the airplane. How do you think it went? He asked. Honestly? Better than I expected. This job is perfect for me and I think I could really make a difference here. I think so too, Adrian said softly. They found Emma happily playing with blocks while Michelle supervised. She looked up when she saw her mother and broke into a huge smile. She's been wonderful, Michelle reported. No fussing at all. I think she's going to love it here. As Zara gathered Emma and her things, Adrian watched with an expression she couldn't quite read. Zara, he said finally. I'll be honest with you. I've already made my decision. The job is yours if you want it. Sarah will call you this afternoon with the details. Zara nearly dropped Emma's diaper bag. Really? Really? You're exactly what our company needs. More than that, I think our company is exactly what you and Emma need. As they walked toward the elevator together, Zara felt like she was floating. This morning she had been a struggling single mother with an uncertain future. Now she had a job with a company that seemed too good to be true, working for a man who had already shown her more kindness than she'd experienced in years. Adrian, she said as they reached the lobby. I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me yet, he replied with a smile. Wait until you see how hard I'm going to work you. But his eyes were twinkling, and Zara could tell that despite his success and wealth, Adrian Chin was fundamentally a good man who genuinely cared about the people around him. As she walked out of the building with Emma, Zara looked back at the impressive glass structure that was about to become a huge part of her life. Somewhere up there, Adrian was probably already planning projects for her to work on. She couldn't wait to get started. 3 weeks into her new job, Zara couldn't believe how much her life had changed. She woke up each morning excited to go to work, something she'd never experienced before. Emma thrived in the childcare center, and Zara's colleagues had welcomed her with open arms. But the biggest surprise was how often she found herself working directly with Adrian. The Morrison campaign needs a complete overhaul, Adrian said, sliding a folder across the conference table to her. It was just the two of them in his office, the late afternoon sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind his desk. Zara opened the folder and scanned the materials. This is targeting working families, but the messaging is completely wrong. It reads like it was written by someone who's never actually had to balance work and childcare. That's exactly the problem, Adrian replied, leaning back in his chair. Our previous communications director had excellent credentials but no real-world experience with the challenges our target audience faces. Lucky for you, I have plenty of real-world experience, Zara said with a smile. Over the past few weeks, she'd noticed that Adrian seemed more relaxed around her than he was with other employees. There was an easy familiarity between them that stemmed from their first meeting on the airplane. While he maintained his professional demeanor, there were moments when she caught glimpses of the kind, gentle man who had held Emma while she slept. How is Emma adjusting to the childcare program? Adrian asked, as he often did. She loves it. Sometimes I think she's more excited to see Michelle than she is to see me, Zara laughed. And how are you adjusting? Really? There was something in his tone that made Zara look up from the folder. Adrian was studying her with an intensity that made her heart skip slightly. Really? I feel like I'm living someone else's life. A good life, but so different from what I expected that I keep waiting for something to go wrong. Nothing's going to go wrong, Adrian said firmly. You belong here, Zara. You're talented, hardworking, and you bring a perspective that makes everyone around you better at their jobs. Their eyes met across the desk, and for a moment, something passed between them that had nothing to do with work. Zara felt her cheeks warm and looked back down at the folder. I should get started on this campaign revision, she said quickly. Actually, why don't we work on it together? Adrian suggested. I'll order dinner and we can brainstorm ideas. Together? But you're the CEO. Don't you have more important things to do? Adrian's expression grew serious. This is important to me, Zara. These programs we're developing, they're not just business initiatives. They're about changing how companies think about supporting families. I want to get this right. There was a passion in his voice that she'd never heard before, even during business meetings. Okay, she agreed. But I need to check on Emma first. Of course. Take your time. Zara found Emma in the infant room, playing contentedly with soft blocks while Michelle read to a small group of babies. How's my girl? Zara asked, kneeling down to Emma's level. Emma immediately reached for her mother, babbling excitedly in the way she did when she was happy. She's been perfect, Michelle reported. And don't worry about staying late, we have evening care available until 8 o'clock. Are you sure? I don't want to impose. That's what we're here for. Emma will have dinner with the other children and probably take a nap. She'll be fine. When Zara returned to Adrian's office, she found that he'd ordered Thai food from what was apparently his favorite restaurant. The conference table was set for two, with real plates and silverware rather than takeout containers. You didn't have to go to all this trouble, Zara said. It's not trouble. I figured if we're going to be working through dinner, we might as well eat something good. As they worked and ate, Zara found herself learning more about Adrian as a person rather than just as her boss. He was funny in a quiet, thoughtful way, and he asked questions that showed he was genuinely interested in her opinions and experiences. Can I ask you something personal? Zara said as they took a break from reviewing campaign materials. Sure. Why does this matter so much to you? The family support programs, I mean. You could focus on any aspect of the business, but you seem really passionate about this particular area. Adrian was quiet for a moment, twirling pad thai noodles around his fork. My mother raised me alone, he said finally. My father left when I was 3 and she worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. I watched her struggle for years trying to balance work and taking care of me. Zara felt her heart clench. That must have been hard. She was amazing, but the system wasn't designed to help people like her. Employers who claimed to be family-friendly but fired her when I got sick and she had to miss work. Childcare centers that cost more than she could afford. Benefits that sounded good on paper but didn't address real-world problems. Is that why you started your company? Partly. I wanted to prove that you could build a successful business while actually taking care of your employees' families. That profit and compassion aren't mutually exclusive. Adrian looked up from his food and met her eyes. When I saw you on that airplane, struggling with Emma while everyone around you acted like you were doing something wrong, it reminded me of my mother. All those times she felt judged and alone because she was just trying to do her best. Zara felt tears building in her eyes. Your mother would be proud of what you've built here. I hope so. She passed away 5 years ago, right before the company really took off. I wish she could have seen what it became. Without thinking, Zara reached across the table and covered Adrian's hand with hers. She knew. Mothers always know when they've raised someone special. Adrian looked down at their joined hands, then back at her face. Thank you, he said softly. They worked for another 2 hours, their earlier emotional conversation creating a new level of understanding between them. Zara found herself paying attention to little things about Adrian, the way he ran his hand through his hair when he was thinking, the way his eyes lit up when he got excited about an idea, the way he always made sure she had everything she needed. When they finally wrapped up for the evening, Adrian walked her down to the childcare center to collect Emma. Mama? Emma squealed when she saw Zara, reaching up with both arms. Did you have fun today, baby girl? Zara asked, settling Emma on her hip. Emma babbled happily, then surprised everyone by reaching toward Adrian with obvious recognition and affection. She remembers you, Zara said, amazed. Smart girl, Adrian replied, gently taking Emma's tiny hand in his. How are you doing, little one? Emma responded with delighted giggles, and Zara felt something shift in her chest. Watching Adrian interact so naturally with her daughter, seeing the gentle way he spoke to Emma and the genuine joy on his face, made her realize that her feelings for him were becoming more complicated than simple gratitude. As they rode the elevator down to the parking garage together, Zara found herself wishing the evening didn't have to end. For the first time since Emma was born, she felt like part of a team, like someone truly cared about both her and her daughter's well-being. Same time tomorrow? Adrian asked as they reached her car. Tomorrow? The Morrison campaign. We're not finished yet. Right. Of course. Tomorrow. As Zara drove home with Emma sleeping peacefully in her car seat, she caught herself smiling in the rearview mirror. Work had never felt like this before, like something she looked forward to, like a place where she truly belonged. But more than that, she was starting to look forward to seeing Adrian each day, to their conversations and their easy collaboration. She was starting to care about him as more than just her boss or even her friend. And that realization both thrilled and terrified her. It was a rainy Thursday evening, and once again Zara found herself working late with Adrian. This was becoming a regular occurrence, something they both looked forward to even though neither had acknowledged it directly. Tonight, they were reviewing the final details of the Morrison campaign, which had evolved into something much more comprehensive than either had originally envisioned. I think this is it, Zara said, leaning back in her chair and looking at the campaign materials spread across Adrian's conference table. This actually addresses the real concerns working parents have, not just what companies think they should care about. It's brilliant, Adrian agreed. You've created something that could change how the entire industry approaches family benefits. Emma was playing on a blanket in the corner of Adrian's office, surrounded by toys that he'd somehow acquired over the past few weeks. She was babbling happily to herself, occasionally looking up to make sure both adults were still nearby. She's gotten so comfortable here, Zara observed. Sometimes I think she likes your office better than our apartment. Well, the view is better, Adrian said with a smile, but there was something in his tone that suggested he was thinking about more than the city skyline. As if sensing the shift in conversation, Emma crawled over to Adrian's chair and pulled herself up to standing, looking at him expectantly. I think she wants you to pick her up, Zara said, amused by her daughter's obvious preference for Adrian's attention. Adrian reached down and lifted Emma easily, settling her on his lap. She immediately grabbed his tie and began examining it with intense concentration. You know, Adrian said quietly, I never thought I wanted children. Zara looked up from the papers she'd been organizing. Really? My whole adult life has been about building the company, achieving success. I convinced myself that relationships and families were distractions from what I was trying to accomplish. What changed your mind? Adrian looked down at Emma, who had moved on from his tie and was now fascinated by his watch. Meeting you two, honestly. Seeing how much joy Emma brings to your life, how much purpose. And watching how she responds to love and attention, it made me realize what I've been missing. There was something vulnerable in his voice that made Zara's heart skip. Adrian? I need to tell you something, he continued, his eyes still focused on Emma. About why I really helped you on that plane. Zara felt a chill of anxiety. What do you mean? Adrian finally looked up and met her eyes. I told you my mother raised me alone, but I didn't tell you the whole story. When I was Emma's age, my mother was in almost exactly your situation. She was on a flight with me, I was crying inconsolably, and she was exhausted and desperate. Zara's breath caught. Adrian? A businessman in first class saw what was happening. He came back to coach, took me from my mother's arms and held me while she slept. When we landed, he gave her his business card and offered her a job at his company. Tears were building in Zara's eyes as she realized what he was telling her. That man changed our lives, Adrian continued. He gave my mother the stability and support she needed to raise me properly. He became like a father to me, mentored me through college and business school. Everything I am today, everything I've accomplished, started with that one act of kindness on an airplane. So when you saw me, Zara whispered, when I saw you struggling with Emma, it was like watching my own history repeat itself. I knew I had to help, had to try to be for you what Thomas Morrison was for my mother and me. Morrison, Zara repeated. As in the Morrison campaign we've been working on? Adrian nodded. The Morrison Foundation. Named after the man who saved us. The family support programs we're developing, they're all based on his philosophy that successful businesses have a responsibility to lift up the families in their communities. Zara was crying now, overwhelmed by the connections and the realization of how much thought and care had gone into every aspect of her new life. But there's something else, Adrian said, gently bouncing Emma on his knee. What started as paying forward a kindness has become something much more personal for me. What do you mean? Adrian took a deep breath, as if gathering courage for what he was about to say. I'm falling in love with you, Zara. With both of you. Somewhere between that first flight and all these late-night work sessions, you've become the most important part of my life. Zara stared at him, her heart pounding. Adrian, I'm your employee. This is complicated. I know it's complicated. I know there are professional considerations and power dynamics we'd have to navigate carefully. But I also know that I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. Emma chose that moment to reach toward Zara, and Adrian carefully transferred her back to her mother's arms. The movement brought them physically closer, and Zara could see the sincerity in Adrian's eyes. I care about you too, she admitted quietly. More than I should, probably. But I'm scared. Scared of what? Scared that this is too good to be true. Scared that I'm confusing gratitude with something else. Scared that if this doesn't work out, Emma and I will lose everything we've found here. Adrian reached out and gently touched her cheek. What if I told you that you and Emma will always have a place here, regardless of what happens between us personally? What if I promised that your job and Emma's childcare are secure no matter what? You'd do that. I'd put it in writing if that would make you feel safer. Zara, I don't want you to be with me because you feel obligated or because you're afraid of losing your security. I want you to choose me because you want to, because you think we could build something beautiful together. Zara looked down at Emma, who was looking back and forth between the two adults as if she understood the importance of the conversation. What do you think, baby girl? Zara whispered. Should we take a chance on Mr. Adrian? Emma reached toward Adrian again, making her preference clear. She has good judgment, Adrian said with a soft laugh. Yes, she does, Zara agreed, looking back up at Adrian. Okay, let's see what happens. But slowly, carefully. Emma and I have been through enough upheaval for one lifetime. Adrian's smile was radiant. Slowly and carefully. I promise. As if to seal the agreement, Emma clapped her hands together and giggled, making both adults laugh. I think she approves, Zara said. Smart girl, Adrian replied. She knows a good thing when she sees it. Looking at Adrian holding her daughter's hand while Emma beamed at both of them, Zara felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the possibility of a real family, built on love and mutual support rather than just necessity. For the first time since Emma was born, Zara allowed herself to imagine a future that included not just stability and security, but genuine happiness and love. And it all started with a crying baby on an airplane and a stranger's act of kindness. 6 months later, Zara woke up in Adrian's penthouse apartment to the sound of Emma's happy babbling coming from the kitchen. She smiled, stretching luxuriously in the king-size bed before pulling on one of Adrian's shirts and padding barefoot toward the sound of her daughter's voice. She found Adrian at the stove, expertly flipping pancakes while Emma sat in her high chair, clapping and squealing with delight. He was wearing pajama pants and a t-shirt, his hair messy from sleep, and Zara thought she'd never seen anything more beautiful. Good morning, beautiful ladies, he said, looking up as she entered the kitchen. Mama? Emma shouted, reaching toward Zara while never taking her eyes off Adrian's pancake-flipping performance. Good morning, Zara replied, accepting the coffee cup Adrian handed her and leaning up to kiss him softly. You're going to spoil us with all this domestic perfection. That's the plan, Adrian said with a grin. The past 6 months had been a careful dance of building their relationship while maintaining their professional lives and, most importantly, making sure Emma felt secure and loved throughout the transition. They'd taken things slowly as promised, but every day had confirmed what they'd both known from the beginning: they were meant to be together. I have something for you, Adrian said, suddenly looking nervous. Adrian, it's not my birthday or any special occasion. You don't need to. Actually, it is a special occasion, he interrupted, reaching into his pocket. It's exactly 1 year ago today that I met you and Emma on Flight 447 from Atlanta to Chicago. Zara's eyes widened as she realized he was right. I can't believe you remembered the exact date. I remember everything about that day, Adrian said, pulling out a small velvet box. Including the moment I realized my life was about to change forever. Zara's hands flew to her mouth as Adrian got down on one knee right there in the kitchen, with Emma watching from her high chair and pancakes still cooking on the stove. Zara Williams, he said, opening the box to reveal a stunning but elegant ring. You and Emma have shown me what it means to have a real family, what it means to love someone more than your own ambitions and dreams. Will you marry me? Through her tears, Zara could see that the ring was perfect, not ostentatious or flashy, but beautiful and timeless, exactly what she would have chosen for herself. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, of course, yes. Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and kissed her while Emma clapped enthusiastically from her high chair. I think she approves, Zara laughed, wiping tears from her cheeks. She better, since I asked her permission first, Adrian said seriously. You asked Emma? Last night before her bedtime. I told her I wanted to marry her mommy and asked what she thought. She clapped and said Dada, so I took that as a yes. Zara's heart melted completely. Emma had been calling Adrian Dada for 2 months now, and each time it happened, Zara fell more in love with both of them. Speaking of which, Adrian continued, I have something for Emma too. He reached into another pocket and pulled out a small jewelry box, which he opened to reveal a tiny golden bracelet with Emma Chen engraved on it. If you're okay with it, I'd like to officially adopt Emma after we're married. I want her to be my daughter in every way that matters. Zara was crying too hard to speak, so she just nodded enthusiastically. Adrian fastened the bracelet around Emma's tiny wrist, and she immediately began examining it with fascination. Now we're all officially a family, Adrian said, gathering both Zara and Emma into his arms. The smoke alarm chose that moment to go off, reminding them that the pancakes were still on the stove. Adrian rushed to turn off the burner while Zara dissolved into laughter. Very romantic proposal, she teased, waving a dish towel at the smoke detector until it stopped beeping. Hey, I'll have you know that some of the best love stories start with a little chaos, Adrian replied, scraping the burnt pancakes into the trash. Is that what we are? A love story? Adrian turned to look at her, his expression serious despite the domestic comedy of the moment. We're the best love story I've ever heard. A single mother and her baby meet a lonely billionaire on an airplane, and they all save each other. That does sound like a pretty good story, Zara agreed. With a happy ending, Adrian added, pulling her close for another kiss. Emma banged her spoon against her high chair tray, clearly demanding attention, and they both laughed. Actually, Adrian said, I think this is just the beginning. Later that morning, they took Emma to the park where they'd spent many afternoons over the past few months. Adrian pushed Emma on the baby swings while Zara watched, her new engagement ring catching the sunlight. When should we have the wedding? Adrian asked. Soon, Zara replied without hesitation. We've waited long enough to be a real family. Spring? Adrian suggested. Emma will be walking by then, so she can be our flower girl. Perfect. As they sat on a park bench watching Emma play in the sandbox, Zara reflected on how dramatically her life had changed. A year ago, she'd been a struggling single mother with no prospects and no hope. Today, she was engaged to a man who loved both her and her daughter unconditionally, working at a job she was passionate about, and planning a future that surpassed her wildest dreams. Do you ever think about that flight? She asked Adrian. What would have happened if you hadn't helped us? Adrian was quiet for a moment, watching Emma fill a bucket with sand. I think we would have found each other eventually, he said finally. Some connections are meant to happen. You really believe that? I believe that kindness creates ripples, Adrian replied. Thomas Morrison's kindness to my mother rippled forward to you and Emma. Your strength and grace rippled into my life and changed everything I thought I wanted. Emma's joy ripples out to everyone who meets her. He took Zara's hand, running his thumb over her new engagement ring. I believe we were all meant to find each other, to become the family we each needed. Emma toddled over to them, sand in her hair and a huge smile on her face. Mama. Dada, she said proudly, showing them the sand castle she'd been building. That's beautiful, sweetheart, Zara said, brushing sand from Emma's curls. Just like her, Adrian added, lifting Emma onto his lap. As the three of them sat together in the afternoon sun, surrounded by the sounds of children playing and families enjoying the beautiful day, Zara felt a peace she'd never experienced before. This was what happiness looked like, not the dramatic, overwhelming emotion she'd expected, but a quiet contentment that settled into her bones and made everything feel exactly right. I love you, she said to Adrian, the words still feeling new and wonderful in her mouth. I love you too, he replied. Both of you. More than I ever thought possible. Emma clapped her hands as if agreeing with the sentiment, making both adults laugh. 1 year ago, Zara had boarded a plane as a desperate single mother with a crying baby and no hope for the future. Today she was part of a family built on love, kindness, and the belief that everyone deserves a chance at happiness. Sometimes the best love stories really do begin with a little chaos, a stranger's kindness, and the courage to believe that better days are possible. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they end with everything you never dared to dream you could have.